So why can't we do that? And Sam Altman, who runs one of our, again, prized American institutions, OpenAI, which is just 5 or 6 years old and has built one of the most important innovations ever, something that can only be done in America. He said that AI is possibly a way out of this economic disaster that we've spent ourselves in. And I think that it's happened because people in Congress are old. They don't care. They don't care that dollar's going to have to inflate. They don't care that we might go broke because they're 80 years old. And unfortunately, a lot of us don't have any options. So a lot of my rich friends, they have Bitcoin. Bitcoin is what you want if the dollar goes broke. A lot of us don't have Bitcoin. It's too late anyway. It's so expensive now. A lot of the richer people, they can spread their millions of dollars into some Bitcoin, or some artwork or some real estate. So if everything goes to shit, they're still rich. You and I, or maybe just you, don't necessarily have that ability. And we need the dollar to succeed. We need the dollar to stay in there. We need the dollar to not go broke. And I think that it is for a lot of reasons. And this happened to the Soviet Union.
Martin, just quick side thought to that. I mean, I totally agree. I think AI is the solution for inflation, right? It's a solution for productivity. But
Sure.
even Sam Altman has said that he wants, some type of regulation that makes sense, right? Like,
I'm sure Sam Altman would.
There was
Sam Altman would love that because it benefits Sam Altman.
well, for sure. But I'm saying, like, what if there were to be? Because there should be some level of regulation applied to this.
Maybe according to you.
Transformational.
No, I don't.
Well,
I don't think so.
According to Sam Altman.
Well, Sam benefits when Sam's regulated, because Sam is the leader. And he'll make a deal with government so that he's the only one who gets to make AI. Everyone else stays behind or falls further behind. Sam's a very smart guy. He's a billionaire without OpenAI.
I understand that. I agree. But I'm saying, okay, say some type is inevitable. What would you do to shape that in a healthy way for the betterment of AI, for EAC, for all the pro AI going forward? Like, how would you shape that?
I mean, I'd want to be as hands-off as possible, obviously. Ideally with nothing at all. But to the extent that the government has to get involved, I think that it should just be on an emergency basis. That's it. That if there's a national emergency, which the government already has this right, by the way, but in the event of a national emergency of catastrophic proportions, the government should have the right to do what it has to do, which it always does. The government has extreme wartime power and extreme national emergency power. The one to the E negative 10 power, it's a number so small I can't even say it out loud, chance that AI kind of goes hectic and there's a problem, a real problem, not a fantasy, but a real problem. We should take the right action. We should have the power to take the right action. But the reality is, nothing bad is going to happen from AI. It's only going to increase our productivity. It's only going to increase our success. It already has. It's an equalizer, not a divider. It makes people, the playing field, more equal, not less equal. It's this wonderful thing. Tech companies, some of them, when they say they want regulation and they kick up some dust, they're not doing that because they think that's a good thing. They're doing that because it helps their bottom line. Meta has been the one company sort of telling the truth here, saying that, the right way to do AI is to do it out in the open and everyone knows what's going on, as opposed to what quote unquote OpenAI is doing. They always say that you can tell when somebody's lying when they're trying to hide something and they put something in their name that tries to convince you that there's something. Like, I'm the most tremendous person in running for Congress. Well, if you need to advocate for that, then, you probably are not. If you already are, you don't need to lie about it. OpenAI is not very open. They're, in fact, as closed as it gets. And, they're that way because it's a really great way to be rich. And they've become very, very wealthy, and they want to stay that way. And I think that the idea of open source AI scares them because everything you can do in ChatGPT, I just put out a product called Mixtral. It's somebody else's product, a company called Mistral, but I put it out as a service for a very, very low price. And it's AI almost for free, basically. And it's almost as good as
I agree with you.
OpenAI.
I'm saying, like, Mixtral, I love. MOE is amazing. But I'm saying, like, in terms of some of the negative externalities, right? Like, how do you enforce the rights of creators or copyright holders that are getting caught up, unpaid and have zero motivation for putting out content if it's just going to get scooped up and used in these other things.
I'm the kind of person that thinks when government gets involved in things, they often make it worse. And I think that if we tried to sit there and answer every question about what AI is going to do well and what it's going to do poorly and what it's going to make things better and make things worse, that we just end up making things worse. Because in general, letting things go as they will is the best course of action. I don't think that, for example, when we subsidized farmers in this country significantly, because farming ended up being something that went through a huge decline, I don't think we helped anyone. We give a false sense of security to farmers who need reskilling. We end up costing more on farm goods, which we could have gotten cheaper elsewhere. Nobody wins. We end up costing a huge amount of tax dollars, and nobody wins. Americans are resilient. Americans will flourish through change. We adapt to change. For everything that gets destroyed by AI, 3 new things will get created. They're hard to envision, but who would ever envision this idea of a content creator? Before the internet, there was no way to do that. To be famous, you had to go to Hollywood. You had to go to DC and wait tables and pray somebody would, quote unquote, discover you. Today, you get discovered. You got the talent, you'll get discovered. I think that with AI, we can't foresee every single thing that's going to come. I've added a few of them. Maybe AI can solve our Alzheimer's problem that's going to blow up our country in expenses over the next couple of decades as we get older and older. That's just one problem. There's many others. Maybe AI will make people more productive. I think anybody that's used it knows that that's going to happen. With productivity comes economic growth. With economic growth, we get out of this deficit. So if we want to be the country that hurts AI and slows AI down, that's the country that's going to go bankrupt. If we want to be the country, and by the way, Europe's doing that. In Europe, economic growth has been flat for 10 years. Our economic growth is up 50% for 10 years. And Europe is really struggling, and they want to keep shooting themselves in the foot. A friend of mine recently said that there's a big race, that everyone's at the starting gate, and the starting gun goes off, and everyone's excited to run the race, and Europe takes a gun out and shoots themselves in the foot and says, now it's time to run. And I think that's an insane thing to do. What would happen if we...
Unless it's medical devices.
Right. What would we have done?
I hear you.
What would you have done if we tried to regulate Google and said, well, every search engine, every search request has to go through the Department of Search, DOS. I'm here from the DOS, and I'm here to tax your search. We would sit here and say, what the fuck? That's terrible. But they could have done that. They could have said, oh, search is dangerous. You could search how to make a bomb. You could search how to make cyanide. We got to regulate that. That's really dangerous. And thankfully, sanity prevailed. But you could have that Department of Search, DOS, and DOS agent. Sounds like a good career. We can make agencies on agencies on agencies to regulate everything in the world, but the reality is it's not going to make us any safer. People are going to do it in the black market anyway. If you have a gaming computer right now that can play a video game, even a PlayStation or Xbox, you can run the most advanced AI stuff that is out there today. You can fake any voice. You can search for anything. You can get instructions on how to make any kind of bomb. There's nothing that's going to stop that. So the idea that we think we can stop it in DC, it's just wishful thinking, first of all. It's this reckless and feckless attitude that, oh, we're government, we're powerful, we're all powerful. No, you're not. At the end of the day, people will drink, whether you ban drinking or not, as we saw. The only people that like this, and people say this in the AI community, is Baptists and bootleggers. The Baptists want the pure holiness of saying, oh, well, we got to stop this because it's truthfully dangerous, I'm truthfully afraid. And the bootleggers are saying, oh, they're right, we got to stop this. And they're looking to fill their pockets with regulated AI or bootleg AI, if you will. And the reality is we don't need to understand the fears of either one. The Baptists are, again, I'm not trying to disparage religion, but the Baptists in this case are AI safety people that are they're too afraid. They're afraid of nothing. They think Skynet and Terminator and all the sci-fi books are going to come to reality because we can be a little more productive. And if you've ever written a line of computer code with AI or asked AI a complicated question that Google couldn't answer, you know the miracle that AI is. And you know that it's probably not going to be Terminator anytime soon. But if you also look at the bootleggers, and I put OpenAI in this camp, I put Google in this camp, they're saying, oh, this is a terrible technology. this could end the world. There's a 1% chance it could end the world. And people gasp and say, oh, no way. And I say, yeah, it's true. It's true. In fact, you can look up a recipe to create, terrible, terrible bioterror weapon with AI. And they say, no, that's impossible. I said, yes, it's true. That means that you have to regulate us and make sure that nobody else can have access to this technology. It would be really scary if Martin Shkreli had one of these, or God forbid, somebody like Mark Zuckerberg, and they just let it out in the open, and the senator or president says, gee, you're right. You're the only person that could be trusted with this. And they said, yes, I am, aren't I? And oh, by the way, I hired your former underling as my head of AI. I said, oh, you hired John? Yeah, John doing a great job here. We like John. Oh, I used to like John too. Oh, great. So for this AI safety consortium, I think we'll put John on, and you put one of your guys on, and we'll make sure that nobody can do AI except us. And they shake hands, and that's what's happening in DC. And it's what happens in medical. It's what happens in energy. It's what happens in defense. It's what happens, dare I say it, rarely, but it does happen in pharma. It probably happened a lot for that COVID vaccine. In general, pharma's a better actor than it looks like on TV. But it happens in pharma too. And all this regulation is just nonsense. It's an ability for people to make even more money by eliminating the free market. We talked about the market for doctors, and doctors are not a free market. They're a market controlled by lobbyists and senators. And nobody wants to hurt the doctor lobby because they'll put $10 million in your opponent's campaign. Now, the good news for me is I don't need money for campaigning, because every time I sneeze, I'm in the news. So it's very easy for me to get attention. It's not easy for, I should look up who's running. I don't even know who's running for this stupid thing. Democrat, Santos seat, GOP-backed Pillip to face ex-Congressman Suozzi. Have any of you guys heard of these people?
Nope.
Tom Suozzi, Suozzi, born in 1960, born in 1962. This guy could be my dad. He used to have this seat, actually, it looks like.
Wow, how sad for him. Like he's like literally like this much farther in life, but like going backwards.
Oh, I remember this guy. He tried to run against Eliot Spitzer, another corrupt New York politician. Look, I'm sure he's a good guy, but he also happens to be, almost 70 years old. Yeah.
Oh, Martin, do you think because you've talked about cutting regulation,
Whatever.
do you think there's room for that when it comes to...
I want to know, how are you able to check on the numbers, like in terms of how many people have submitted them or how many you have?
I can check. There was somebody asking a question, so you probably...
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's all right.
Can you hear me, Nora?
They're talking, I think. Yeah, sorry. I couldn't hear Zeb either when he was talking. Dan, is it you?
Yep, I'm talking. I don't think you can hear me. Oh, Martin, I just had a quick question. So you've talked about cutting regulation. Do you think there's room to streamline clinical trials so that we can get drugs quicker to market?
Great question. Not really, unfortunately. The drug industry tries very hard to go as fast as it can for obvious reasons, right? So from that side, they're fighting the fight as fast as they can. The FDA doesn't really slow things down too much. You could argue that there's about a year or two of red tape that's a little, too much, but you could also argue that a little red tape in pharma is not such a bad thing to triple check, triple check these things. It's not, we're talking about drugs human beings are going to take. We want to be careful about that and study the mice and study the folks that, the animals that get very, very high doses of these medicines. And it's very sad because they're euthanized. And anytime you develop a drug, you're euthanizing several hundred animals, if not more. Very frustrating and sad, and may not even be necessary in some cases, but that is the way we do things. I think that whenever there's a way to shed a year or two off of developing a drug, they take it. And then there's people at FDA, like I mentioned Richard Pazder earlier, who are really great people. They're medicine people first and foremost. They're not politicians. Dr. Pazder, head of the oncology division at FDA, he zooms drugs through. If they're going to save a life, he zooms them through. You can get approval in a few months, which normally takes 12 months. So, there are people at FDA that do care about this stuff. They're people like you and me. I mean, they have friends with cancer. Some of them one day will get cancer. So ultimately, I think every shortcut that you could take has been taken, and the word shortcut in medicine is generally maybe not a word you should be looking for. So shortcuts lead to mistakes, and mistakes can cost a life. So we do have a methodical system that does work, and I think that's why we're the great country that we are. That we are the envy of the world when it comes to medicine. I think that the making it easier to make medicine is probably going to come from other parts of technology, including AI. The biggest question in medicine is, what do you target? What gene or protein do you target to get the disease cured? Once you know that, it's actually kind of easy to figure out the rest. But yeah, clinical trials could go faster. The regulatory reviews could go a little faster. There's always improvements, and I certainly would do my best to help them. I know Balaji was considered for FDA chairman before, and he would be somebody that would be really great to talk to about, as a friend of mine, and others, that how to cut even more red tape out of the process. But I got to say, it's fairly efficient. I think our country loses the most money and has the most inefficiency with our 2 or 3 big expenditures. Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, or the bulk of our tax dollars go to. And how to solve that is the billion-dollar question. Drugs, relatively small fries in the scheme of things. As much as I love my former industry of pharmaceuticals, it's the tail wagging the dog. We could use a new cancer drug, a new Alzheimer's drug, a couple of other things like that. But at the end of the day, and CRISPR potentially could be really, really valuable, and that could also result in miracles. But it's something that our bigger costs and our bigger fears are much bigger than just medicine. And I think, again, I don't want to be an alarmist. There are ways to get out of this debt burden that we have, but the national debt is something that is gotten to a point where, I'm alarmed, and I have the last thing to do with DC and anything related to politics. I hate politics, and want to be so far away from it. But somebody has to stand there and say no. Somebody has to stand there and say, no, you can't spend money on this. Remember when your parents would say, you might go to your father, I remember doing this, and say, Dad, I need another $20 or something like that. And he eventually would say no. And that's called being an adult and being responsible. And if my dad never said no, guess what? I would have asked for every dollar he had, because I didn't know any better. And I'd be responsible. And I think the beautiful thing about being an adult is you get to say no. And nobody wants to say no in DC because it costs you votes, and it costs you friendships, and it costs you loyalty and power, and you look like a jerk. And it's not a great way to get elected. But, being my dad at that time and saying, no, Martin, you can't have $20 for whatever stupid thing you want. There's a limit to my money, and, I'll give you the first time, but not the 15th time. And, that's what we have to do in Congress, in my opinion. I only have time for a few more questions. Alp, do you want to